welcome to Scott, or welcome back. We are very happy to have you all today with us again. And today's Scott webinar topic is one of the important topics of the day. Regenerative tourism and justice, rebuilding travel for just future. Today's moderators are Professor Rastegar and Professor Roshish. Professor Rastegar has been moderating other Scott webinars with us, and he doesn't need to be introduced. He's a researcher and academic with multidisciplinary background in environmental sciences and tourism management. His research is positioned at the forefront of justice-oriented sustainability transitions. Our second moderator today is Roshish. He obtained his PhD in business and economics at the Research School of Management at the Australian National University in December 2023. He joined the School of Hotel and Tourism Management, Hong Kong Polytechnic University, as a research assistant professor in January 2024. Before embarking his academic career, he gained over 5 years of management experiences in various sectors in Nepal. With this background and mentioning about the wonderful team that we have today in the webinar, I'm going to ask our president, Professor Jafar Jafari, to start the webinar with welcome remarks. Professor Jafar, the mic is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning or good afternoon, good evening to you, no matter where you are. It's a pleasure to be present personally at this webinar. Most of the time, because of time differences or because of our travels, it becomes impossible to participate in the Scott webinar series, which we have done many. We have 2 series built in together. One of them is specials, and the other one is ordinary. And we have done since the COVID, we have done close to 70, 80, 90, I don't know, maybe 100 webinars. So it's a pleasure to be part of that, part of it. And the topic of today is very important. We often read articles on the subject of regenerative tourism. What I'm personally interested is to see if this is more a concept or a practice, or when the concept turns into practice, what happens within cultural norms of different countries. We have 194 countries. Do they all read and understand regenerative tourism the same way? So definitionally, maybe yes, but when it is framed for practice, then it may have different parameters. So I would be interested to see how cultural influence, national cultural influences shape and reshape the concept and the practice of regenerative tourism. I welcome everybody to the session. We have fantastic panelists, and I'm sure each one of them would address a different dimension of regenerative tourism, and together we would have the whole picture at the end. Thank you very much again, and welcome to this webinar.
Thanks, Professor Jafar. Without any ado, I would like to invite our moderators, Dr. Rastegar and Dr. Roshish, to take the floor. The floor is yours, and we are all eager to learn from the discussions you have organized and architected today.
Thank you, Kazim. I will be stepping in first, and Raymond will be joining in later. Uh, and also a warm welcome, everyone, from me as well. We already have a total of 99 participants gearing to listen to some of the amazing practitioners and academic that we have lined up today. So, and it's a great pleasure to co-moderate this rather important discussions alongside Dr. Raymond Restega. Now, for years, the conversation in our field has been dominated by sustainability, the idea of doing less harm. But today we want to push that boundary, featuring some prominent academic and practitioners to discuss about what if tourism could do more than just sustain? What if it could actively heal, restore, and replenish what has been lost and damaged? And this is the essence of regenerative tourism. In exploring this central idea, we have about 40 minutes for the speakers to present. Uh, so and after the presentations from the speakers, we will have the Q&A sessions for the participants where they can ask questions that they are deeply held with to the prominent panelists that we have today. And if you want to ask the questions, the participants are encouraged to tap in your questions in the chat window, and we will later, after the presentations, review the questions and present it to the panelists. Now, I understand that this is not a session designed for either Raymond or me, so I will keep my discussion rather brief and immediately start with the first presentations. So firstly, our first speaker for today is Professor Susan Bacon, a globally recognized leader in our field from Griffith University in Australia. Is a recipient of the prestigious UN Tourism's Ulysses Award. Her work is pivotal in bridging the gap between scientific research and tourism policy. She advises globally leading organizations and brings unparalleled expertise on the systemic changes needed for the transformation in our industry. Today, she will kick off our discussion by sharing her insights on global developments in regenerative tourism. Professor Bacon, it is an honor to have you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and welcome everybody. It's really great to be here. I'm just bringing up my slides, and if you could briefly confirm that they are in order. Yep, that's great. So we have very little time because we want to discuss later, and I will not go into the definitions of what regenerative tourism is. Maybe some other people will, but I'm sure everyone on the call has ideas. But what I will do is connect it to some global perspectives, and I will bring a few case studies from my part of the world, which is the Pacific, so New Zealand and Pacific Islands. So I know a lot has been said about regenerative tourism, sustainable tourism, but I do want to remind ourselves that the Sustainable Development Goals are, of course, continue to be really relevant. They operate at a global level. They bring together countries and important organizations around the world use them, including, for example, for finance, development, and so they are really important. And in my mind, the question then is more, how can we connect some of these frameworks to the amazing work and the mindset shift that is happening through regenerative tourism? I also want to bring this up because I think it's absolutely crucial. Now, I'm obviously representing the research part in this triangle, coming from a university, but it's all about connecting the science, the policy, and the practice. And I think in the introduction it was already made clear that a lot of practitioners become involved in regenerative practices, tourism or elsewhere, or have already done so without knowing that some scientists somewhere talk about these in a more abstract way. And then, of course, policymakers increasingly do get interested in what regenerative tourism can offer. And I do want to bring this in, which I'm grateful to my colleague, Dr. Rastiga, of course, who has shared a lot of the knowledge on justice with me, that this triangle where science, policy, and practice come together is also an opportunity to really address justice questions, to recognize them and to restore. And I see regenerative tourism at the absolute center of this. Now, this is a figure that, with the help of AI and my very targeted questioning, I created to effectively show the two parts, the really more locally focused regenerative tourism, often referred to as a web of life, a network, brings together the human perspective, culture, nature. And then on the other side, you have global issues like climate change, for example. You have the Sustainable Development Goals in the corner there. You have the United Nations. You have global corporations that we also need to deal with, even if we do regenerative tourism locally. There's still major global players that are part of the tourism ecosystem. And the key is to build bridges between those to really make sure that together we can transform. Now, talking about transformation, this is a picture from a field trip I did in New Zealand when I worked for the Department of Conservation, and we were taken out by the local indigenous people for a couple of days to hear and feel nature, Te Taio. And it was really about expanding our consciousness. And you can see down there the circles of, it's a very established framework, Popper's Three Worlds. Number one is effectively the world as it exists in terms of physical matter and energy. And then jumping to number three, which is what we scientists often see. We try to model this world to understand it in abstract terms. And a lot has been written on regenerative principles, for example. So that's all part of the world three, but it's the world two that's often missing, especially in science, because we want objective methods. But it's really about expanding our ability to, for example, connect with nature, to perceive it, to become, and make sense of the world. And so in this example here, this was a great start for me anyway, as a personal journey to see that world tour, and then translate it into back into my academic world. And that's where this concept of the regenerative literacy emerged from, where again, working with global organizations like the World Travel and Tourism Council, UN Tourism, we often talk about carbon emissions, standard certification, toolkits, and somehow we don't make progress. So why is that? And so in this paper where we talk about this literacy, we argue that it's because people just don't do toolkits alone and change the world. It's not until we truly engage with each other. And you can see here the hongi, the New Zealand greeting, where the host and the guest exchange. And until we also engage truly with the environment, getting our hands dirty, really being part of it, planting, composting, all of that together effectively increases our chances for change in tourism. And it's quite a shift in concept from just measuring your carbon footprint. Now, one of these shifts can be seen in one of the case studies very close to Christchurch on Banks Peninsula. It's a reserve that effectively one single man, Maurice White, has restored for the last 35 years. It's now well over 1,000 hectares. It was degraded farmland. It's now absolutely thriving bird sanctuary, and it's connected into the bigger world, so to speak, rather than just a local progress by, for example, Air New Zealand. And I have to say here, I'm not endorsing carbon offsets as such, but I do know that Air New Zealand provides significant funds to the reserve. And then, of course, it allows people to come and visit. And I don't know if you can read that little sign where it encourages people to also truly engage with nature on a different level. So say hello, Fern. And I think it's helping people maybe to become part of this really inspiring change at a local level, but connecting in with the wider context. Another example from New Zealand where regenerative tourism is truly embedded in the community is Wanaka. So that's down Queenstown, Wanaka. They have a program called Love Wanaka. It's community-based. It's not driven by the council. It brings together tourism businesses, visitors, and local restoration projects, as well as some cultural projects. And the idea is to reinvest, and I think it was mentioned in the introduction, for tourism to help reinvest in the quality of life, the quality of the environment at place. And so they've raised last year $74,000, maybe not that much, but part of the program is not just dollars, it's getting people involved. It's getting volunteers involved, it's getting opportunity to share and effectively create a reinforcing circle of people being committed to the place. Now, the final example is one that we worked with in an Australian-funded research project in Fiji. And you can see on the left-hand side, we developed a whole better practice guide. We didn't call it regenerative tourism, but effectively it is very much anchored around regenerative tourism principles in the Pacific Islands. And so this particular organization is in the Mamanuca Islands, out of the main island Viti Levu, and it brings together the hotels, local community groups, connects them to global funds. Again, that's why I started with the development goals. You have to plug in where you can to get the support, for example, from the United Nations Environment Programme, or other sponsors. And then you can see on the drop down what they're doing. They're doing a range of mangrove restoration, turtle projects, cleanups, awareness with school kids, visitors. It's an amazing, effectively giving back to place, investing in the local environment, but doing it really with the local people and especially the children. So a really great example where tourism is effectively wrapped in into the local improvements. So with that, I just conclude 5 key points, and you can see they all start with connecting, because today I really wanted to bring across the idea of connecting the different scales, so global and local. We need to connect different perspectives, and that includes scientists, but it absolutely includes practitioners, policymakers, and others that I may have left out. Reconnecting people and nature is obviously an integral part of regenerative tourism, but also justice. In terms of visitor experience, connecting purpose and experience. And then, of course, using the opportunity of the regenerative tourism momentum to build in a restorative justice component. So with that, back to the moderators, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Professor Bacon, for your wonderful presentation. Now, to the audience, I would like to remind you to post your questions in the chat window, and if you want a specific panelist question, say their name, and they will be responding to your question. After this, we have another amazing speaker lined up, and she is Dr. Loretta Bellato, who is currently working as an adjunct research fellow at Swinburne University of Technology. She brings a unique and vital perspective, is both critical early career researcher and a trained regenerative practitioner with deep experience in the community health sector. Her work challenges us to look beyond surface level solutions and examine the core foundations of regenerative tourism approach. And if you are new to this area, you would, like Susan's work, you would possibly have gone through some of her important works published recently. And today she will be guiding us through crucial insights that emerge from her work on regenerative tourism. Loretta, we are very much looking forward to your presentation. The floor is now yours.
Thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be invited. So what I thought I would do is, I suppose, put I suppose a provocation forward, and getting us to think about the concept of healing and how that might in the future supersede justice when we're talking about regenerative tourism. Okay. Why is this not working? Okay. So firstly, as is the tradition of the lands on which I've been living and working on, and I'm currently in Ugamba country on the Gold Coast, so attending a conference. I'd like to acknowledge the lands on which I've been living and working on, and also the lineages from which I've been drawing from to do this work. And so for me, a lot of what's influenced my work has been the regenerative development movement that really focuses on designing processes that build the capability of people and more than humans to to be able to harmonise and work together. And also people like Anna Pollock, who a lot of you do know. And just to highlight that for many years now, she has been emphasising the need to consider tourism needing to operate within nature's laws. And so that's going to, I suppose, be a big focus of what I'm talking about today. And so rather than giving you a definition and going through it all, what I'm wanting to emphasise, which is relevant to this talk, is that how I understand regenerative tourism is that it is derived from Indigenous and Western science perspectives and knowledges, and that it does call us to respect Earth's principles and laws, and that the work is about harmonising tourism practices with nature. And so one of my papers was looking at what are some of the regenerative tourism principles, or proposing those, and that came from an extensive literature search of academic but also practitioner literature. And also I consulted with Indigenous leaders and regenerative tourism and regenerative development leaders to come up with these. And one of them was very much about adopting healing approaches that restore relationships between people and the rest of nature, and draw from diverse knowledges, cultures and practices that come from each and every place, that there's no one size fits all. But importantly, if we're going to be drawing from Indigenous and local place-based knowledges, we need to make sure that it's contributing to self-determination and sovereignty. And so in listening to me, I'm hoping that you'll be, I suppose, considering, is justice an appropriate framework for regenerative tourism? And be thinking about how, from an Indigenous perspective at least, the focus is more about restoring relationships and healing, and getting back to first laws that are focused on mutual respect and place-based kinship and our everyday practices of renewal. And so some of you may be familiar with an Australian Aboriginal leader called Anne Paulina, and some of her colleagues conceptualised climate justice as climate care. Bringing it to a real life example, some of you will be familiar that I've been working on Birrarung Yarra River regeneration work, which is based in Melbourne, Australia, and comes through, this river comes through the middle of the city. And so pre-colonisation, this was a healthy, drinkable river, but it soon became very industrialised. And these days, tourism sees it as a river of consumption, something that can be used for human benefit. Yet in 2017, there was a legislation that was brought in. It's a bicultural legislation called the Yarra River Protection Act that recognises the river as one living and integrated natural entity. And so that started to have quite big implications for how we think about the river. Rather than a resource for human consumption, it's a river that we need to revere and have a kin and reciprocal relationship with. And from an Indigenous perspective, the traditional custodians see the river as part of us, and that we belong to the river, and that we have an obligation to keep the Birrarung alive and healthy for many generations. And so this helps to start to reset our perspectives, and rather than see the river as separate to us, and that's something that we need to control and use for transport, that we start to see the river as our host of our city, and that and that it's a being that we develop a reciprocal relationship with, and that it has its own agency, and that needs to be a key stakeholder when we are planning for the river and planning for the city's future, and that our city's health is dependent on the river's health. And so in terms of the research that I did, we came up with various principles of working, but from a tourism perspective, a key consideration is how can the work that we do with tourism ensure that the benefit to the river is a net gain, as well as for other stakeholders, and that we need to start to build new stories for the river. And what I've found in my research is that tourism in Melbourne is not yet ready. There are sectors, there are some parts of tourism that are, but overall, we still need to do the work on setting the conditions for tourism to be able to jump into this sort of work. And so there's this relationship between, in an Australian context, and certainly in Melbourne with this river, around how do we bring colonial law or Western laws and legal frameworks together with traditional custodian laws. And so another case study is not mine, it's the work of Stefan Lazic, who's a researcher based in Italy, and he's on this call today. He's done some extensive work with various Indigenous communities around regenerative tourism, and this one is based on the Sacha-Wasa Indigenous community in Ecuador. And again, Stefan was working with this community that had experienced a broken relationship with nature due to the livestock industry. And can't see my slides, I'll just close that off. And so rural and Indigenous tourism initiatives have been crucial in helping to start to regenerate these relationships, and using tourism to restore that connection that Suzanne was talking about. And so the environmental degradation that had been occurred and disruption to people's livelihoods has been brought together by tourism partnering with reforestation work, and which have had lots of positive contributions. And so in terms of this Stefan's paper, it invites us to reframe justice to focus on care and ethics and post-human conceptualizations within the context of place-based ways of knowing, rather than taking solutions off the shelf. It's actually what do we draw on, and involving the Indigenous people in the benefits. And so yeah, I encourage you to have a look at that paper. I'm aware that I'm running out of time, so I won't go too much into, but I do want to I suppose make a comment that a lot of people from countries that don't necessarily have an active Indigenous community, how does this work relate to you? And I suppose I just want to point out that there nearly every country has an Indigenous human history, and so there are ancestral connections to land that can be revived, and even those territories that don't have a human Indigenous history have a non-human Indigenous history. And so how can we tap into those knowledges and those histories to help us understand about regeneration for today? And so I suppose despite me having a bit of a challenge around the word justice and ideas around justice, I see justice as a really important part of the puzzle of the work that we need to do here with regenerative tourism. However, I would see it. I hope the message you're getting from me is that this is an opportunity for us to broaden our perspectives more in a much wider way. The other thing I wanted to say is that, just to be even more provocative, is that I don't see that justice is possible within our current capitalist systems because of the favouring towards extractivism and exploitation, and that we need new socio-political, economic and ecological systems transformations so that we can get to the fundamental work of regenerative tourism, which is to re-establish harmonious relationships with nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta, for this thought-provoking presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you have some specific questions for Loretta, please feel free to shoot some questions in the chat window. Now we are moving to another side of the planet. We have an amazing speaker who is an indigenous to Sikkim, India. She is currently working as a senior lecturer at Taylor's University, Malaysia. Dr. Bhutia and Dr. Laze Bhutia, her research is deeply grounded in the intersection of culture, heritage, tourism, with a specific focus on indigenous knowledge system of her home, Sikkim. She brings a powerful perspective on how traditional wisdom is not a relic of the past, but a vital guide for the future. She will be speaking on linking traditional knowledge with regenerative practices in Sikkim. Dr. Bhutia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roshis. Okay, thank you so much for having me. And it's an honor and it's a great opportunity for me to bring about my tiny world, which is towards the northeast part of India. It's like, if you see in the map also, you won't be able to pinpoint, but it's a very beautiful place. So my place is called Sikkim. Okay, so where we always consider that mountain rivers are our ancestors. Okay, we just don't see mountains as a scenery or as any resources. So today I'll be focusing on the cultural and heritage tourism rooted in our sacred landscape, then indigenous knowledge that we considered as is our memory, and then how the regeneration can bring the justice. Okay, this is the mountain, and this is a very famous mountain that is the third highest mountain in the world. It's a Kanchenjunga. It was actually the original name by our indigenous group, by my great-grandparents. We used to name as like Kanchenjunga, but somehow it changed into Kanchenjunga. So the question is that, is it possible, can regeneration is really possible if we ignore the knowledge and wisdom of the people who knows about the land, the indigenous people, the real people? Okay, is it really possible? What is happening? We are bringing? We are talking about the sustainable tourism. We are talking about the regeneration tourism. We are bringing the sustainable goals. But is it possible if we really ignore the real people? The picture behind is it's a Silk Road. It's the oldest route. So it's touch. Okay, this is the picture I have taken. There's a Silk Road, but international tourists are not allowed to enter in this part. Okay. So as in my part of the world is also the same thing is happening that, okay, we started developing tourism that, okay, Sikkim has opened their doors to tourism in last 2 decades. And then slowly, initially, locals were very happy that, okay, people started generating income, people are getting employment. And then, but they never anticipated that, okay, what will be the cost for their culture. Okay, what will going to happen in future? They never has an anticipated, and they never thought about that. Okay, it will going to bring a negative impact, and one day they have to fight for their own culture, their tradition, and then the modernization that is happening to the local people. So in Sikkim also, the tourism is one of the fastest growing sector, that now the people started moving from their traditional practices towards the tourism. Even they started commoditization in everything. So slowly what happens is like, as I can witness that, okay, our sacred places, many places were very sacred to us. My great grandparents, my grandparents, still she is alive. She's 100 plus, and then she tells me the stories of that mountains and that rivers and the lakes, that okay, how the important the part of that lake was. Now it has become a selfie point for the tourist. And it's so saddening for us to witness that. And then the question arises like, it's not possible now we will stop tourism, because people started relying on tourism so much. They have become so habitual of the tourists. They want an easy money. And but what will going to happen? Okay, so contradiction is like, tourism is growing, but sometimes it damages our very culture and the environment that which is attracting the tourists over there. So challenge is, so can tourism grow and still be regenerative? So this is the two lakes, that example. This is the Chomu Lake. In local language, we call Changu. Most of the tourists, they call it Chomu Lake. And this is the Kechuperi Lake, which is in the north. This is in the west part of the Sikkim. This is in the east part of Sikkim. In Sikkim, both the places, international tourists are not allowed. But even if only the domestic tourists are allowed, but somehow it's causing a pain, it's causing a pressure to the local community, and somehow the state cannot hold a large number of tourists. So there is a serious carrying capacity is happening. This part of the lake is still untouched. Okay, why? Because this is inaccessible. First of all, you have to hike, and then you have to take a long route. That's why the tourists want to go in easy places to go and to see. But this is like easily you can go. But as my grandmother told me that, okay, these were the places that, okay, my ancestor used to pray to the other part of the world. So, but now it has become a selfie point. Then, so for us, it's like when we talk about the regeneration, sustainable tourism, for us, it's a memory. We have been following this, and then whenever I see any new things is coming up, I feel like, oh my, I know this thing. Okay, oh my grandmother has mentioned about this thing. So it's in our memory. It's in there in our root. Okay, like for example, let's think about another community that's okay, Lipcha's community. They have so many stories about their rivers, their mountains. Okay, they themselves call as they are the daughters and son of the mountains. So they have the stories about the river, and even the names of river, forest, and even the trees, like how Professor Loretta has mentioned that, okay, we have a bonding with the forest also. We just don't go and simply cut the trees. Okay, we have the names of the trees, and then if we cut the trees also, if we use for a domestic consumption, we have a traditional way to utilize that. We just don't exploit it. Then for the Lipcha community, they always honors the rivers. Okay, there is a tradition that, okay, during the monsoon time, there is a rituals that, okay, they honor the river to have a cultivation in their land. And then forest rituals, they have a very different forest rituals before entering into the forest, before going to the trekking. That for tourists is trekking, for us is going to meet our ancestors. Okay, for Bhutia community, like this is one of the example, that Panglapsal, which we celebrate and we take a vow to reminding us to protect our mountain Kanchenjunga. So because there have been a lot of attempts to climb on the Mount Kanchenjunga, and we have been protesting it that okay, you should not be sending to the Mount Kanchenjunga, because we have our own story about the Mount Kanchenjunga. We don't want, like, when we became the part of India, okay, Sikkim was a different country before 1975. So we became the part of India in 1975. After that, okay, when we mixed with India, there are certain rules and regulations that was being initiated by our king, that okay, the first was like, nobody will climb on the Mount Kanchenjunga, because Mountain Kanchenjunga is not just a mountain, it's our ancestor, it's our protector. So if we look another example, the case in a farming sector also, that okay, we have been practicing a traditional farming, and then yak yielding and paddy millet. Okay, we always follow the cycle of farming cycle also, and that's why the Sikkim was in 2016 it was recognized as one of the organic state of the world. So we never use fertilizers or anything. So till then was okay. Then these were not just a tradition, it was like we were maintaining our ecological balance, and then we wanted to have like the tourists to have respect to our land. During the Panglapsul, this is another festival that we do celebrate. This is an indigenous festival. So we believe that okay, after our death, that okay, we will meet marks people like this, and then we will be taken by this kind of people. Okay, and then there's a story of it also, that okay, how we take a vow to protect our Mount Kanchenjunga. And then here is another community, the indigenous community. She's my friend. Okay, this is a Lepcha community. When they start any kind of festivals or any kind of rituals or any kind of celebration, even for cultivation also, for agriculture, farming also, they worship their nature, they call the nature, and then they seek for the blessing, and then the natures were given their part. So recently, even the government of Sikkim is also taking an initiative, but the question arises is like, is it enough? Is it like sufficient to protect the very nature that we have, that okay, culture we have been practicing? Is it enough that okay, whatever the government is taking an initiative, will it justified? Okay, so recently, because regenerative tourism is recently came in Sikkim, because Sikkim was been practicing ecology tourism and ecotourism since 2007 to 2016. So after that, recently the government started focusing on regenerative tourism. So there is a place called Pakyong. They started that okay, for trekking in the river, okay, camping site, they are generating an awareness that okay, you have to practice regeneration tourism, and they have been inspired. The tourists were given a briefing that okay, how you should practice a regenerative tourism. And there is a project called Inspire, which is supported by the World Bank also, that okay, they are creating, I think by 2032 or something, there is a plan that okay, they will make trekking trails, so people can come, and then they can enjoy the environment, but hope they will maintain the dignity of the local people. Then in Sikkim, there is a government that initiated that a strict rule that okay, no plastics are allowed. So any tourist vehicle entering to the Sikkim, they must have a garbage bag. So any tourist that okay, they are not allowed to throw any garbages. So these are the positive steps. But the question arises from the indigenous point of view is like, is this enough? Is this can support? So these are the small initiative they have initiated. Okay. So as an indigenous person, what I see, if I take this government initiative and then if I combine with my own perspective, so what I see is like, rather than just they framing the policy and then imposing to the people, they just invite and talk to the, when they're doing a river camping or river trekking or anything, they should involve the Lepcha indigenous people to talk about the importance of river, because river is everything for us. So there is a story in Lepcha community. There's a very beautiful story. It's called Rungyo. So Rungyo is a river, and then the river in the other part of the world is known as Tista. So they have the story of that river also, that okay, how the river will flow and what will happen if we try to intervene in that river also. So I think, it will be an appropriate that okay, if they involve Lepcha people and then showcase that the importance of rivers in the life of the people. And then they should, like, the initiation from the World Bank that inspired, they should involve the Bhutia elders sharing about the stories that okay, because Sikkim till 1945 there were no proper accessibility to the Sikkim. So my part of the world were never invaded by Mughals, and then we were never ruled by the Britishers. So we had been untouched. So accessibility was very difficult. So Bhutia peoples were the one who started building small roads and then connected them with the other part of the world. So in my opinion, that okay, they should involve this elderly Bhutia people, and then how they have, what was the story behind going this trail, and then it will be worth sharing to the tourist about the trails also. Then waste management in our ethnicity, in our culture, that okay, every environment, every river, everything is so pure. So we have to make sure that okay, when the tourists are coming, how we link with the ethnic purity, that okay, how we treat our nature. So if the government projects and the indigenous tourism, the knowledge system people, the knowledge, if I think they work together, then I think the regeneration will become real. So the bridging the two world is like, this is a traditional way of healing. So we have like healers also, the traditional healers. So before we go to the any other thing, so and somehow it works also, that okay, many people they say that okay, this is a superstitious thing, but somehow it works. It worked on me also, and I think the people like me, they know the value, and it's in our nature. I think it's in our nature affinity that okay, we somehow, if we go and then if we go to the healer and all, we get healed. And then this is the pictures that okay, when we honor our mountain, and this is the initiative that okay, government has been doing it. So the contradiction and tension still come to the same line, that okay, how that okay, the tourism is a capitalist market. Okay, how we can be sure that okay, we will not focus on the profit, and we'll focus on the protecting the culture, the importance of our culture, and how we can be sure that okay, the Panglapsal festival that we are celebrating will not be a performance for the tourist. And then how we will be sure, because Sikkim is a very tiny place, it's a very small state, it cannot accommodate a large number of tourists, and it's a very cold place. So usually during the summer times, tourists, like the all the northern and the west part and the south part of the India, they prefer to come to the Sikkim. International tourists, we hardly received any international tourists, because there are lots of restrictions for the international tourist. So, but we are having so much of pressure with the domestic tourist itself. So we must ask that okay, is regenerative tourism possible in the capitalistic market? So that's
Dr. Bhutia, it's time to wind up your presentation.
Okay, so the question is like, regeneration is not about adding more activities in our point of view. It's about restoring that we have and balance it out and respect them. Then in Sikkim, that okay, this regeneration is not just a new thing. It's in the memory, and our mountains and rivers and the rituals, it holds the answer. And then I think The regenerative tourism will only be possible if the guest want to become a guest, not a master. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhutia, for your wonderful presentation. And for the guest, if you have some questions, especially for her, please tag Dr. Laze and post your questions. Now we are off for the final presentation of this webinar. The presentation will be done by Ayusa Pasai, who is CEO of Community Homestay Network in Nepal. She is at the forefront of putting regenerative principles into practice, and as a leader of the major social enterprise in Nepal, her work is a powerful testament to how tourism can be a force for good, directly empowering local communities and particularly youths and women. So for the next 10 minutes, she will walk us through her journey about how they are using tourism as a force for good.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for the kind introduction and for the invitation, and to all the participants who are here for taking out the time on the weekend to come and join us for this important discussion. So to begin with my presentation, I think we can go directly to the next slide. So I think I will be shifting gears a bit, and then towards the practitioner side and how we started, why we started. I will just take us all through that story. We started as a CSR project back in 2012 and established as a separate legal entity in 2017. And what was the purpose behind us being there out in the action was our founders saw some of the problems that tourism was facing, Nepal was facing. It was, for example, limited exposure in terms of local authentic cultures, limited benefit. Although Nepal gets a lot of tourism opportunities, but when we ask people, what do you understand or what is Nepal for you? Everyone answer, it's mountains. It's very rare that I hear that it's about culture or people. It's often about the mountains. So he really wanted to change that narrative as well, and also absence of destination management. So when I got this email, I was a bit shy to join in first because we don't use a lot of terms like regenerative tourism when it comes to Nepal's context, because a lot of studies are still absent in terms of carrying capacity, or so how could we claim that our approach is regenerative? So today's presentation will be also focused more on the culture and the people we're working together with. And I think I would urge everyone present here to help us, the academia especially, to come forward with more researchers in Nepal's context, except for the mountains like Mount Annapurna or Everest. I think these are the places where carrying capacity studies are being done, but there needs to be a lot more study in the context of Nepal. So this is my request to everyone present here. So the third case here was absence of destination management, declining culture, and limited access to technology, because the rural tourism in Nepal holds a huge potential. Indigenous communities are looking out for opportunities. And how we take also tourism when as an organization we approach to community is tourism can be one of the tools for community development, and if they are ready to accept that tool or not. So we always have a dialogue with the community if they're fine with this tool to be integrated into their system. So this was the part of the problem, and that's how we were born, to take this problem and challenge it and bring it into action to progress further, to build a system where we can challenge the existing narrative. So can we go to the next slide? So in communities where we work, tradition, culture, livelihood, environment are closely tied, which means tourism also brings both cost and benefit. And from practitioners' perspective, justice for us is also not just focusing on the benefit that is often talked about in tourism, and especially when it comes to rural tourism, that it benefits people, it's for the people, and it's often comes from the savior mentality, like we are helping the people. And especially in the case of Nepal, it's often romanticized, or we are often thought as a charitable case. So I had this discussion recently with one of the industry leaders, and I was telling her that often people imagine us meditating or climbing mountains, and that's not true. We're working Saturday like this. We're often part of the big industry as well. So I think we just need to shed that part of romanticizing things. And from practitioners' perspective, we're trying to challenge that part. We're trying to challenge communities as mere recipients to active agents, active entrepreneurs. So that's how our business model is designed as. We are community-centered and we have a business model. So we always, when we go to the communities, we explain that we are a business and we are here to help you become entrepreneurs if you wish to. So this is our business model. It's 80-20. So whatever a traveler spend with in our community. So we are also a booking channel, OTA platform. So we take 20% markup, and we are very clear with our travelers as well and with our communities. So after taking 20% of the markup, 80% goes with the community. These 20% is spent on our operational cost, but also in product and destination development, marketing, promotion, training, consulting, and also management and coordinations of reservation. So the 80% that goes to the communities, we also encourage them to create it as development fund for them to decide on what they want to invest on. Sometimes the community invests on streetlights, sometimes on waste management. And with our experience, we have also come across that it's not our say to say what you want to do with that fund. It's their call and how they want to take that forward. Can we go to the next slide? So I think, yeah, I really want all of us to take think for a moment that can tourism be more than profit and postcards? Can it actually restore communities, culture, and our planet? Especially coming from a country where mountains are hugely promoted, and we're very proud of our mountains, but we also want everyone to think about there are people living around that mountain, and the postcards that often travelers see are without people. So where are people? Where is the benefit and what cost is attached to them? So I will take all of us through the challenges that Nepal face and the approach we are trying to take, which we think is a better approach. And I'm always open for the discussion later on and how to make it even better. The suggestions and recommendations are really welcome. So the challenge is economic challenge, economic leakage. So communities see few benefits. Cultures can be commodified or eroded of youth mining areas or from the country itself to the abroad, and environmental degradation, such as climate shocks, over-tourism, and everything. So the better approach, or the approach we are trying to at least take, is empower women entrepreneurs, women-led homestays, micro-enterprises, community-led homestays, where we are trying to revive the culture. We are trying to build destinations with climate resilient strategies, demand management, and revenue recycling. Revenue recycling in terms of the business model I just explained. So we work with 50 communities across Nepal. And within this 50 communities, most of the owners, the community homestay owners, are women. And I'm today talking with an experience of 900 women that works with us, 2,000 beneficiaries that are direct and indirect beneficiaries. So whatever I'm presenting is with that experience. And we truly believe if we put communities at the core of planning, decision making, and not just planning once the tourism initiatives goes there, but planning if they want tourism in their area or not. Because in some of the places, when we approach them, they have rejected, like, no, for now we are fine. So we never approach those destinations. But some of the areas, they said, okay, we want to do it. How shall we take this forward? So we work in that manner. And we truly believe that that is the starting point, not after the initiative is taken directly to the community. So also about supporting traditions, local experience as well. The next slide, please. So this is also from how we can build connections and not just travelers as mere recipients as well, or like previous speakers told, not just as they need to be treated as king or special people, but also someone who are trying to build connection. So we focus a lot on designing itineraries very sensitively, promoting slow and meaningful travel, learning and cultural exchange. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Already.
Some of the examples that I want to take all of you through is women empowerment that we have seen in communities that were our early communities who were part of our community homestay network. When women step into visible entrepreneur roles, the second generation. So the photo to the right, the guy who is at the right is a product of that. So when he saw his mother, aunts, everyone doing community tourism, he took up the entrepreneurship and started his own bike station in one of our community homestay, Panoti community homestay. So it's not just empowering one generation, but how the knowledge is passed on to intergenerational, how they take up the decisions to get involved in the tourism sector as well. Next slide, please. And also it's about reviving the culture. So some of the examples that's presented here is since we are also in the fast-paced changing world and modernization is taking huge part. So local people are very shy of doing cultural activities. So we also took instructors and taught like their traditional instruments, which was dying, slowly fading away from the community because the youth were shying away. So with the collaboration with one of the instructors in Kathmandu, we took him there, had 3 months training. And now, not just the local women who are entrepreneurs, but also the younger generation are very keen to learn and they're taking it forward. Similar with the script as well. Next slide, please.
It's time to wind down now.
Okay, thank you. So some of the examples are environment taking off the pressure, because we just don't want to talk about over-tourism and creating alternative destinations, but also how we can manage and build destinations in a responsible way. So this is not just possible. So I can wrap it up with this slide. So we can never decide that as one entire organization giving this decision. So we are now working with local government, a lot of business partners who believe in responsible tourism, regenerative tourism, a lot of impact partners like Isimo, Planetera. We are working, everyone is working together because the cost, the waste management, water problem, destination that are being very having a lot of challenges through climate changes, water scarcity. So we are being very careful and we're taking this forward and also trying to challenge the narrative of Nepal from being charitable case to somewhere where people can come and do immersive activities where local entrepreneurs are happy to welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha, for your wonderful presentation. And thank you all the speakers for amazing presentation for the last 15 minutes. Now, with that, we will be going for a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll reconvene and we will ask your questions, present your questions to the panelists. See you in 5 minutes.
If you've had the privilege of traveling all over the world, then you've definitely seen the impact that tourism can have on local communities and the environment. When done irresponsibly, tourism can be harmful to the very places and people that we come to admire. But it doesn't have to be this way. Sustainable and regenerative tourism practices can help us enjoy the beauty of nature and cultures without harming them. Sustainable tourism is about supporting local communities, respecting their traditions and customs, and preserving their cultural heritage. By doing this, we can help to promote economic development and alleviate poverty. Regenerative tourism is about giving back to the environment and leaving it better than we found it. It's about being mindful of our impact on the land, the water, and the wildlife, and taking steps to protect and restore these precious resources. Sustainable and regenerative tourism practices are essential for the future of our planet. We have a responsibility to travel and explore the world in a way that supports and preserves its natural and cultural heritage. At Representation Plus, we work with destinations to equip them with the infrastructure and education necessary to enable the best sustainable and regenerative tourism practices. We believe that this is the only way forward in preserving and promoting the beautiful world we all inhabit. Our team helps destinations define their products and attract the right type of visitors who are passionate about experiencing the local culture, respecting the environment, and supporting the local economy. We understand that every destination is unique, and we work together with our clients to create tailor-made solutions that fit their needs. We take pride in our ability to empower destinations with the knowledge and tools to implement sustainable and regenerative tourism practices. At Representation Plus, we are committed to making a difference in the world. By working together, we can preserve and promote the beauty of our planet for generations to come.
All right, everyone, welcome back from the break. Now, if you have any questions for the panelists, please post your questions in the chat window. In the meantime, Dr. Raymond Rastegar will take us to the next round of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rashish. And I would like to start by saying good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Just before we start this session, we had this conversation among the panelists and the moderators, and we just realized among ourselves, this very small group, we have people all the way from the States to Europe, to Japan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Australia, and New Zealand. So that's something positive. It shows the power of tourism and our interest that brings this group together. And of course, when we are looking at all these amazing participants, we are from all over the world. And if I want to briefly just recap this conversation, I would like to start by a sentence from Professor Jafari. We know he has influenced our fields for many decades now, but if I would like to just pick a sentence, and I have heard this a lot from him, and that means a lot, is that if we can put our knowledge into practice, it has no value. And I was really happy to see this conversation continued in the discussion we had, and what we heard from our panelists. Because even a few months ago, when Rashish and I had this conversation around this idea of regenerative tourism and justice, and what even we could hear, today from our panelists is when we are talking about tourism, we have to move beyond, considering tourism as an industry. We could hear today, tourism is a living system. It has different components, and then that's the time we can see how justice and regenerative tourism comes together. Susanna, she told us, and I had the opportunity and honor to work with Susanna. I have learned a lot in the last few years, how we can think about policy, practice, and how we can think what's the best way to be able to link this. And for example, we have this knowledge generated in academia, how we can think about transferring this to something that can be communicated with people outside academia, with practitioners. And then, Loretta, I was really happy to hear how you are talking about this healing system, because when we are talking about healing, that's the time we are bringing in this idea of justice. If you go to justice with all this conversation, healing is playing a very important point. That's the time we can talk about different, components, different players, local people, host, guests, humans, non-humans, local and global level. So it's the helping us to better understand actually what's the link between the concept that we are discussing here. And then the next speaker, Lazy, thank you so much for taking us to that journey, introducing your homeland, talking about how people can have different perspectives when you are thinking about mountains, about land, about the river. It can actually be part of the identity of the people, but in the eyes of tourists, it might be different, might be just for a selfie. So it's again very important conversation to have here to see how it can help us to better understand these concept. And then finally, Aisha, it was really interesting to hear how you are talking about challenges in the industry. And that's the way we want to think about all these issues, because we need to be able to identify, to recognize the challenges, and then putting community at the center of this conversation is again very important. And that talks clearly to the idea of even Scott webinars, because if you go, and probably Professor Kazem can tell better, if you look at all these webinars over the last few years, they always have this conversation around communities, how we can, go back to think about these people as stakeholders who have benefit, who needs to benefit from tourism, who needs to be recognized, their values, their needs. And then again, it was a very different perspective to hear from the industry. I would like to stop here because I do not want to make it very long. We really enjoyed hearing that from our wonderful panelists. Thank you so much again for Scott team, our panelists, and wonderful people who are present here. So I will pass it to you, Rashish, to start the conversation by asking, because I could see we have many questions, and I believe you have received even some questions before the webinar. So again, it's over to you, and please to start the conversation.
Thank you, Raymond. Now we will start with a question that I received from the very first question that we have in the chat window, in fact. So the question is from Jimmy, and she has a question for Dr. Susanna. So
Sorry, I can hardly hear you now. I could hear Raymond very well.
all right.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, I got my mic up. Hi,
Okay.
Susanna. So we have a question here from Jimmy, and so Jimmy is asking if you have done any research in Samoa, and if you could share some insights from your research.
So we're actually trying to, well, we're looking at starting a new project there around sort of climate risk. And I mean, regenerative tourism always has to be part of that. And I think we heard a lot around, local culture, self-determination. And I think Samoa, so in this best practice guide that I showed with the Fiji example, we do have one example from Samoa around the beach falas, which for anyone who has been in Samoa will know they are very much community owned. They're reasonably low cost, low capital. So this breaks a little bit the circuit with the capitalism where only the big players can come in with big hotels, but it allows to participate basically in business with reasonably limited starting capital. And also what was found, of course, in the case of disaster, they're reasonably easy to rebuild. But importantly, they allow the visitors to truly engage with the local culture, cuisine, and so on. So that example is there. Samoa is an interesting place because in some ways, luckily, it has escaped the mass tourism model largely, different to some other Pacific islands. So in that sense, I think there's a lot to learn. And I know that the local culture is very well and alive and is an essential part of how tourism is run in Samoa.
Thank you, Susan. Now we have another question for Loretta, and I invite everyone to actually step in. So this is a question from Lawrence, and they ask, please, how can regenerative tourism be embedded into a community to fight the impact of illegal mining in a community? An example is illegal mining happening in Ghana, which is destroying forest reserves and water bodies. So can we have your thoughts into this, Rita?
I think she might have just lost her connection.
Yes. So would anybody like to step in and share your insights?
I might just quickly say something because it's obviously an incredibly complicated question and it so much depends on context, but it also shows how at the place you can't just look at one thing individually. Like, I mean, tourism potentially in this context could be something as an alternative that makes illegal mining less attractive because it offers better livelihoods. And I think it was in Lacey's presentation where, or maybe it was Loretta who said that tourism gives local people the opportunity to use their culture to in ways that they determine that they want to share with the visitors, and maybe that strengthens also the ability to then fight back on some of those other maybe extractive, I don't know the situation there, whether there's external players involved probably, but potentially build confidence and agency at the local level for tourism, and means to then maybe create a different pathway.
Thank you, Susan. Now we have another two questions that came into me through the personal chat window. So this first question is for Ayusa. In your presentation, you have identified 80-20 model to ensure financial benefit stays for the locals. Beyond finances, how do you tackle the challenge you mentioned of retaining long-term community engagement, especially when tourism income might be inconsistent?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for the question. So for us, there is 80-20 model that I explained, but so many communities, we are not able to send a big volume. It's a small number. The faraway destinations also take time, but the way we are trying to build a relationship with them or to keep them motivated is by through capacity building programs. So we organize training programs according to the need of the community. So we have product development team within our bigger team. So within the product development team, we have community coordinators. So community coordinators maintain relationship. They update about the news, how things are going in terms of tourism, like the tourism trends and what are their needs, what kind of trainings do they need. So we do a lot of community training programs based on the needs that community is wanting, and leadership trainings. We also have volunteers coming from different countries who come in and do, and Anik is also here today in this call, and she came and designed this beautiful leadership training program with our community members. So it's very beautiful thing. A lot of times trainings are more like a workshop, and we also do peer-to-peer learning sessions where one community is taken to the other community. We work with local governments where we can facilitate these programs, because sometimes we as travel agency, let's say, or practitioners not being from the community might be disruptive when we say you should do this, you should do that. So it's better that one community can share their learning to another community who had work in promoting or safeguarding their culture. So exchange of culture is always beautiful, and learning from each other is always beautiful. So we try to facilitate these kind of conversations as well.
Thank you, Ayusa. Now, another question is for all of you together, but I would like to begin with Loretta. How do you distinguish between regenerative and sustainable tourism?
Yeah, that's a question that gets asked very frequently. And for me, I don't see them as polar opposites. I see that there's a lot of interconnectedness, but I think at the core of what is different, and, you know, again, it's really hard to talk about it in because it is about making some generalizations to distinguish it. But for me, what's at the core is it's the purpose. What is the purpose of tourism? And so in sustainable tourism, it's often being used to reduce harm, the harms of tourism, and enabling continued profit-driven activities. Whereas with regenerative tourism, the purpose of tourism is to promote the health and well-being of communities at a very simple level. But, you know, Suzanne's done work on this. I've done work on this, so have others, to try and step out what are some of the differences. But that for me is one of the core things.
Okay. Thank you, Loretta. Before we go to Susan, I want some thoughts from Laji. What do you think are the key differences between regenerative and sustainable tourism, especially considering the indigenous viewpoint?
While considering the indigenous point of view, the sustainable tourism, I usually, as a personal, like from the indigenous point of view, feel like, you know, you have to be constrained with the goals that, okay, you have to be into that goal. And then we talk about the benefiting, using, and then promoting, and then we talk about sustaining also. But whereas when the term comes like regeneratives, it directly focuses on the memory of the people, that, okay, indigenous peoples, which is have a very, very good and positive impact on the people of the indigenous people. So if in future, or like in policy or procedures, that, okay, if they start involving the indigenous people and then bring their thoughts and their knowledge system into that, then I think the regenerative tourism, the concept, will be successful.
Thank you very much, Laje. Now, the next question, I would like to start with Susan and then go to Ayusa and then close it up. So this will be the last question for the day. Considering what we discussed on regenerative tourism and also the insights on sustainability, we have a question that is here from the audience. Can we, okay, it just moved. All right, can we go beyond the typical metrics of measurement of success of tourism? Are the usual sustainability indicators enough, or does it need a different approach of measurement?
Shall I jump in? I think it continues on from the previous question, and I loved Lassie had a slide there with the rubbish bags, and then you asked, is it enough? And you said it's not enough. And I think, I mean, for me, we need everything. We need obviously sustainability and sustainability indicators because, for example, we need clean energy, and you know, so we need solar panels, and to me that's just part of, I mean, that's why I brought in the sustainable development goals, but it's not enough. And we need to connect in different ways, and we need to, for example, have measures of, yeah, how many stories are being preserved, how many stories are shared, but then shared to in the way that the local people feel comfortable. Because there's obviously a big topic around also who's actually telling the stories. And so that's where I'm having a little bit a reaction sometimes to external certification schemes that come into countries and say, we certify you with this global standard. Well, ultimately, it's the local people who need to say on certain things whether they think it's performing well or not. I mean, we can do carbon measurement and water efficiency, and that's okay. But ultimately, I would always have a local group of people to say, yes, we feel this part of tourism generates well-being or whatever outcome. So I think a combination would be really a very productive way forward.
Thank you, Susan. I can see Loretta unmuted and ready to go. What are your thoughts, Loretta?
Oh, sorry. No, I think it was somebody else who wanted to speak. But yeah,
yeah, I forgot.
Metrics are an interesting thing, and I'm thinking about what Bill Reid from Regenesis talks about in relation to metrics, and rather than always thinking about what we're wanting to have in the future, metrics can be a really great tool to measure how how we're progressing along the way. And like what Suzanne was saying, often it needs to be locally defined about what is a metric for success. And that will be different in different places, and using language that's meaningful. You know, one of the other case studies I worked on was in Flanders in Belgium. They never used the word regenerative. It didn't mean anything when they were doing that, you know, the time I was doing, they were talking about flourishing. How do we have a flourishing place? That was meaningful. That's what they got behind, not this new imported word that, you know, was not part of their culture.
Thank you, Loretta. And this brings me to the point that Ayusa actually brought in quite early in her presentation, that I'm not quite familiar with the term regenerative. I have not used it often. So I actually want Ayusa to bring in her thoughts as a practitioner working deeply with indigenous communities. What are your thoughts on sustainability metrics? You're muted.
Okay. So as a practitioner, we often challenge this question of sustainability, regenerative, responsible tourism. So I think the definition keeps on changing as per the time, but as practitioners or as individuals, as travelers, as travel industry members, I think we really need to think at this point of time, how do we want to define tourism? How do we want to travel? If we just think if we're traveling a place like traveling someone's home, I think that would make a lot of difference. I think you wouldn't want to destroy places if you are invited by a friend. So I think that is enough to think about how do you want to travel, and also to think, I think how we need to move beyond as a industry people, how we need to go beyond thinking this place is being crowded, mass tourism or over tourism, because and then we are in search of off-beaten places, never been places, not on the bucket list. But if we are trying to create that another list, I think that place will be also a mass touristic place or a overcrowded place. So I think how to better manage a place, how to bring all the partners together, from local government to local stakeholders to travel agent to travelers. I think the onus lies on all of us. And that's how I want to take the sustainability matrix forward.
Thank you very much, Ayusa. Now I'd like to have a quick thought from Lazi, and then I'll pass it on to the organizers. Yes.
When we talk about the metrics that, okay, I think somehow we always, when we talk about the tourism, always think about the profit and loss. So everyone is thinking into the making profit. So I think from an indigenous point of view that, okay, when we bring tourism, and then as I said that, okay, it has a negative and positive impacts, and we all know that, okay, it will bring a negative impact if we are trying to bring our part of the world to the other part of the world. So I think we should not always think about the profit and loss metrics, and then we should be focusing on that, okay, yes, this is the way that, okay, we need to preserve it. At the same time, how we will going to make it income out of it also. So I think we need to sustain it, like how the definition of sustainable tourism they say, but at the same time, from an indigenous point of view, that, okay, please bring our memories into it to have a very fruitful, result.
Thank you very much, Lazi, and thank you everyone for your wonderful presentation and amazing responses to the questions that were raised in the floor. We have exceeded time by a couple of minutes, and I'm very happy that we still have such a good number of participants in the webinar. It's thanks to amazing amazing presentations we had and amazing responses to the questions. And with that said, and thanking to everyone, all the panelists and the participants, I'd like to hand over the floor to Kazim.
Can I
Thank you.
just say a word, Kazem? Sorry, because I can see we have got many more questions here, and that's unfortunate that we do not have the time. I'm just saying on behalf of our wonderful panelists, these four beautiful ladies, I'm sure they are happy to receive this question. If you would like to, just have this conversation with them directly, you can email them. And I know some people are even interested to know about your work, your organization. So this webinar is just a start. That was our aim, just to initiate this conversation. So please continue this conversation with either of the panelists, and I'm sure again they are more than happy to receive your questions. Sorry, Kazem, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Rashish, and thank you, Dr. Rastegar. It was wonderful. My brain has just started to ask for more, but yeah, the time is limit. And as you mentioned, yeah, we have just started. We are definitely going to invite you and your wonderful team to book with us for the 2026 webinars. I just got a message from admin that to ask you for that one, which means that you are wanted. Your topic is very important. As you can see, we have over 100 people here, many people on YouTube, and they are still here waiting for more information and more discussions, and it was wonderful. So to me, I like you, Dr. Rastagar, I want to borrow a sentence from Dr. Jafari, who is the president of Scott, and this is also the slogan of Scott webinar series, that is, a nice place to live is a nice place to visit, which means that if we are paying a visit to a destination, we should respect and believe that this is a nice place to live first. And then visiting a nice place to live means visiting people, share their resources as a responsible and provisional residents, let's say. And if I give back the lessons that I'm taking home on behalf of maybe Jafar and Professor Malcolm Cooper, who couldn't attend, finally make it here, is that regenerative tourism and sustainable tourism that they have overlapping, it can goes in two different steps. One is that tourism can compensate if it had negative impact on the destination to regenerate it. If tourism or over tourism or any impact of tourism has created some negative elements or impact on resources and on livelihood assets, so how tourism can compensate it and how regenerative tourism can pay back. And it can also go beyond that. Sometimes if a destination, a place to live that is not really affected by tourism necessarily, but tourism can bring more sustainability impacts or bring more sustainable livelihood for people. It's not be necessarily the case that we are going to mitigate or minimize the negative impact of tourism, but to help the community to regenerate itself. Because sometimes if the livelihood is not sustainable, the community itself goes beyond the sustainability aspects, and it cannot continue the sustainable livelihood. And tourism can be an alternative for a livelihood diversification, for generating new income, for bringing more awareness about the community resources that sometimes in everyday life it looks very usual, but it has extraordinary values, and all can be given to the community through tourism. I'm not going to give a lecture here again, but I would like to thank all of you wonderful speakers, and thanks all the audience, and to let you know that the recordings of this webinar that is moderated by Dr. Raymond and Rashisha is going to be available on YouTube channel of Scott Webinar. Everybody can access it without any need or registration. But if you register on our Scott YouTube channel, you can stay tuned for the new videos. All Scott webinars. Over 100 recording of Scott webinars are available for you, and the YouTube library of Scott is your library. Thank you very much again. I wish you all the best, and looking forward to see you in next Scott webinar. We have one webinar every month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.